Welcome back to another episode of Ballroom Chat, the podcast dedicated to sharing the dance journey. I'm your host, Samantha with Love.Live.Dance. Today, I'm joined by not one, but two guests. We have Enio Cordoba and Terryl Jones on the podcast. If you are somehow not already aware of who they are in the dance world, Enio was a U.S. amateur Latin champion. He made the quarterfinals at Blackpool as well. He was a U.S. Pro Rising Star Latin champion. Terryl made the quarterfinals at Ohio Star Ball in the professional ballroom category. Together, they were the Cabaret Champions at World Swing Championships. They choreographed for Dance With Me. They starred as themselves in God and Salsa. They've recently launched an online platform called Yoga for Long Life, and they also provide consulting to dance studio owners and professionals through EXT Consulting. This conversation with Enio and Terryl I found incredibly helpful. We actually got so far deep into the weeds on a couple of different topics that I am having to split our conversation into not one, but two episodes. So this is just part one of my conversation with Enio and Terryl. We get into the nitty-gritty about finding your dance community and what it takes to build a strong dance community. We talk a little bit about where studio owners tend to go, maybe not on the most advantageous path when it comes to like structuring their classes and their lessons. We talk about the pros and cons of competitive dance and just a lot. We talk about a lot. So please enjoy part one of my conversation with Enio and Terryl. Well, thank you so much, Terryl and Enio, for joining me today on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Doing well. I'm so excited to get to talk to you both today. I imagine for our listeners, at least from a name recognition standpoint, they probably know a little bit about you, but I like to start with all of my guests just to give us a little bit of background and information on where your dance journey started and kind of the short version of how you got to where you are today. So, Terryl, let's start with you. Kind of where did your dance journey start, and where has it taken you so far?
Well, it started, my parents were swing dancers. They had grown up. My dad was a good Southern boy and had done cotillion like all good Southern boys do. And so they danced. My grandmother was actually a dance instructor back in the day. So I did grow up dancing with my dad, and then I lived in the Philippines when I was in high school, and Latin, specifically cha-cha, is very popular just as a social dance there. And so that's where I started getting introduced into Latin dancing. It was just in the social aspect. And it wasn't, then when I came back stateside, I actually just went through a training class at a dance studio and started in that direction. And I started competing in standard. That was my thing. And I had trained under Bemmel McGregor. And along the way, I'm shortening this a lot, but I was doing very well. And I got to know Gaynor Fairweather. And I took a really close look at her life. And while everybody was saying, oh, that's so great, because that was the pinnacle, right? That's the pinnacle of where you can go. And she had a beautiful home that she hadn't been in 6 months. You can't have a pet. You can't have even a plant. Relationships are difficult when you're living on the road. And I thought, if that's the best that this life has to offer, that's not what I want. I love dancing, but competition is not going to be my thing. And so I retired from competition, which allowed me to even fathom dancing with somebody that was retired and did Latin, which wasn't my thing. I was a standard dancer. And that's when I paired up with Enio, AKA Captain Chaos. And so from there, we've just kind of ricocheted into doing different things as opportunities came. But our biggest thing that we did, and what I truly love, and what I had come back to was I really, really loved teaching and I loved performing. And those were way more important to me than competing. And teaching was my first love. And so that's where Enio and I built our huge studio and the Granada. And so that everything else was kind of side to that. They were sidebars, something to do for fun. It was like, oh, let's do this show, let's do this tour, let's do this, whatever. It was really just, hey, you want to do that this weekend? And that's why so many of our accomplishments were done in weeks amount of time. Rather, I hate to say, some people work years to get for something. We'd say, well, let's do this in a month, and we would do it. And
by the way, they want us to be in a movie, and are you in? Yeah, okay.
Let's or like even our World Swing Championship was like, that's this afternoon. Grab your dress. Let's go now. So nothing became a drive. It was just all sidebars, and that's kind of where the short version. And then Enio. There's no short version on his side. None.
Well, my mom wanted me to meet Costa Rican girls. So she got me into a Costa Rican folkloric group when I was 17. Basically, it was our chance to get the car and get the hell out of the house. So I got to meet a bunch of college kids and high school kids my age, started dating one of the girls. And we would just kind of do swing and throw each other around swing to rock and salsa. It was early 70s, excuse me. And in one of those cut, 7 years later, she got into a class at USC. And one of the requirements was go to an outside event and see ballroom dancing. And she took me along. They played a little, a lot of swing, a little salsa, and we were able to kind of throw each other around and had fun. But part of that night was a show by Ron Montez and Carol Montez. And I was like, wow, that was so cool to see. And they had not won the US championship. They were currently in like second or third. So they were fantastic. And I saw them do Latin and standard. That was actually Ron's strength in those days. Anyway, next week, come on back. We got da. And I thought, oh, same thing next week. We had fun. Let's go.
Because typically Enio only hears a quarter of what is said. All he heard was next week, blah, blah, blah.
So I went, and turned out it was a dance class. And this is my favorite part of it. It was a quick step class. And the English teacher, the owner's wife in the studio, Jill Morton, basically, I tried to sit out. She's like, no, mister, you're coming with me. Drags me out on the floor. So very simply, I'll do it. I'm an athlete. I'm terrible. But dance hold and frame, and it was like so precise. And it's quick step, first class, which was glorified bronze foxtrot. But anyway, I'm bad. Anyway, every time the teacher said rotate, the girls would rotate to me, and this would be eyes skyward, praying, like, oh my God. And I just, and I'm Joe College fraternity, and these are fraternity girls. The funny thing was they were enjoying dancing with the little propeller head, Coke bottle glass engineer types. Mm-hmm. But the athlete, they were, looking skyward. So I made this vow. I am not giving this up. I will outdance every one of them. Give me 6 weeks. Well, it didn't quite happen. It was a little 6-week summer course. I got to where maybe by the second or third week I can actually do it, but I still suck. And my vow was I'm not giving this up until I can outdance every one of those. I don't want to repeat that word here. But anyway.
There was a problem.
There was one little problem.
Well, there were several problems.
So come fall, I decided, okay, I'm going to sign up for a ballroom class just because it was fun. The only problem was I kept chasing the girls in this class level-wise. And unfortunately, one of them in the class happened to be Liz Curtis.
Not a bad benchmark to chase after, I guess.
Well, had I caught everybody else and had left her out of the mix, I probably wouldn't be in this business, because at that time I was pre-med. But anyway, so I stayed with it. I end up on the dance team. Liz graduates. She's 1 year ahead of me, and I become team captain on the team. We win U.S. Nationals in New York, at the time USBC. The following year, I'm ready to graduate, and we get invited to Blackpool. And I go to Blackpool instead of graduating. I had enough money for one. I thought, no, I'll never get to Europe. I'll push back my graduation. Didn't matter at that point. So now I'm thinking, I'm just going to go to Blackpool, dance once. And in that moment, when we did our final pose, I look up, 5,000 people are really cheering and applauding. And I said, this is what I want to do the rest of my life at that instant. Only to hear Ron Montez on the last day of Blackpool, which is where they say, they invite one person from each country to say what Blackpool means to them. And to hear Ron say the first time he danced at Blackpool, and I think it was with the BYU team, he looks up and he sees the people cheering and he says, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And to hear that, so jump forward. Now I'm like, I'm going to compete. So I gear up. 3 years later, I win the U.S. Amateur. Next year, I turn pro, or basically the end of that year, I turn pro after the Worlds. And Ron hooks me up with a partner from San Diego. So I now have had a partner from Houston. Now I have a partner in San Diego. I'm living in LA. I like these long distance partnerships, I guess. And commuting on weekends and win the California Rising Star. That lasted a few months. I met my first wife. We competed, took her to Blackpool. We make the 24 at Blackpool in our first year, 24 in the Open and 24 in the Rising Star. It was like nuts. And we decided, that we really wanted to push it. So what we did was we went on a cruise ship. And on the cruise ship, we performed like 4 times a week. And that performance was what got us that quarterfinal at Blackpool, because all that performance is so much more important than just technique. I had really good technique. I will say I had Nina Hunt and Ron Montez as my coaches, but it's the performance aspect that most people don't understand. It allows you to connect with the audience and the judges and stuff. So improvise, and you really get grounded when the floor is moving. So that was part of, that was what kind of got me to that pro level. And then we decided to have kids, and we kind of stopped and started until she gave up. And I really wanted like one more chance. And so I got one more partner, won the U.S. Rising Star after 1 year of training her. And then I said, okay, I'm done. I'm retired. I'm going to open a studio and do that. And along comes this one, trouble, riding a broomstick. And that's our little story. Anyway, we become friends, and eventually the story how we met is hysterical, but I'll leave that out. We become just performers and running the studio, and we always sat and finished a class, and we'd sit there and analyze. What did we do? What could we do better? Just analyzing our teaching to sharpen it and refine it and make it.
Very critiquing of ourselves,
right.
Every single class, because there was always more to learn. And as far as teachers, we felt that there was always room for improvement. And just because we were taught a certain way doesn't mean that that's the best way for something to be taught. And because I had other things that I was training in and studying, I was bringing in those facets of my knowledge and challenging what we were doing.
Right. And then I was getting into the psychology of the teaching of dance.
And that also tied in with him working with the Olympic skaters, because he was working in those places.
So that kind of took us to, quick, the amateur pro career. And then we were never going to compete. Then, like I said, one day somebody challenged us and it was stupid, but
It was the wrong person that got under his skin. Nobody ego.
And the World Swing Championships are that day. I just looked at her and said, grab your dress, we're dancing today. We had just come off the boat. So we were tight, but we didn't have specific intent on doing this thing. Well, we enter it, and it turns out we win. And come back the following year, because we won the cabaret division. We come back the following year and we danced in the classic division. And it turns out we come in second, I think, in that one, second or third. And fortunately, my brother didn't dance that year. So so that's like, boom, that just happened. We never.
And then we didn't do it again.
Right.
We moved on, something else. I did that, check the box. So, we're not one of those people that the competition is what drives us.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I kind of want to circle back to that because Terryl, it's in the way that you're describing it, it's very obvious that competition was something nice to do when the opportunity was right and when the partnership was right, but it wasn't a driving force for you because you didn't want to be on the road constantly. But Enio, you had that drive to do competitions for it seems like several years in a row. So was it just at the point where you were like, all right, I can calm things down, I want to shift my focus? And then did that competition drive ever come back? Or at the moment that you shifted to, I want to be a studio owner, I want to teach classes, I want to put my energy into this, did that lure of competition kind of go away for you?
And I say, A, nothing ever calmed down. B, he just redirected that competitive from actually competing on the floor to competing other places. That's my opinion. I'll shut up.
Oh God, tough question. I had kids at that point,
and they were young.
And they were very young. And being on the road with a different partner, and she was in Denver. See, I went from Houston to San Diego to Denver, but I'm still living in Pasadena, California. It was hard. We would be a week there and a week here, a week there and a week here. And so it was, I really wanted to be around my kids. And they were only like a year old and had one on the way, which is when my ex retired. She said, I don't want to do it anymore. So, but we had an agreement that we said, if either one of us wants to keep competing, it's cool. So we did. But at that point, it was really hard on her and carrying the load with a baby and one on the way. I said, no, it's not fair. So I packed it in. So that's when I said, no more competing. And then a couple years later, Terryl and I get together. And actually probably, like 7 years later, we get together. And we, at first she was just helping me because I had gotten injured. I had broken my foot in a performance and I needed somebody to be my dance dummy. And
unfortunately, the dummy didn't keep her mouth shut.
Oh God, I should have known. Should have used duct tape. But anyway,
he was teaching a standard class with like technique that was making my skin crawl. But
she was a standard dancer and me the Latin dancer, right? But anyway,
it was like
so anyway, we were going, out dancing. Here I am in a cast, and we're dancing for it was actually almost 6-7 months where that foot was healing. And so we'd go out dancing, but I'd be on one foot, spinning around, whatever. And it was great. It was wonderful. But no, we started to compete right after we won the world swing. But the thing was that her Latin was very American, let's say Fred Astaire. And my Latin was very international. So there was so much kind of, I don't want to say stress, but
let's just say he didn't like my Latin. I didn't like his standards. So salsa and swing was neutral territory.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that works.
We'll
agree
that works.
They'll believe that. Okay. Anyway,
so we fought less.
Yeah, but that's true. So in a new relationship, you go, it's not worth it. And we were having fun. And my studio in the early days was hitting. right about when the swing was the Gap commercials, the Lindy Hop was hitting, and we rode that wave. We just happened to get the world boogie woogie champions in our studio, and I mean, it just took off, and the studio started to grow, and then salsa hits, and we had jumped from swing to salsa so that we weren't competing with my brother. I didn't want to compete against my brother, and we got into the salsa, and right then Dance With Me hits, and we get into the movie, and then that opened all kinds of doors in Europe. So now we're traveling back and forth, like 6 trips to London in 1 year. It was just crazy. There was no time for competition at that point.
Right.
We didn't want to do the salsa thing. Plus, at that point, I think I was now, actually at that point, I was 40. And, the kids were out there throwing themselves on the floor. And I was like, no, not interested. Don't want to do that. I can do it. I don't want to.
Right.
It's just not worth it. There's no.
It wasn't a quality of dancing that he appreciated, because at that point in the salsa community, any lift, no matter how badly it was executed, was considered fantastic because they hadn't really seen lifts yet. So coming from a trained background, we would look at these lifts and we think, oh my. And there were people that were impressed by it because it wasn't part of the community. It wasn't part of the dance scene yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you were seeing people that were doing high quality dancing being beaten by people that were doing poor quality lifts and poor quality dancing in between, and the judges didn't know enough at that time either that they were impressed by the bad lifts, it was like, no. That's just not where we want to
Let's go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to circle back to the topic of kind of co-teaching and reflecting on how your lessons were going and having that ongoing dialogue about, okay, I have this training outside of dance or that's along with dance, or I'm looking into the psychology of how we're teaching, what we're teaching, and why we're teaching what we're teaching. How important is it in your mind to have a co-teaching partner that you can bounce off of and work with within a studio setting? And also, I kind of want to take that conversation into more of as we develop and grow our dance syllabus and our teaching knowledge, how important do you believe it is to be cross-trained in other modalities so that you can bring some of that information in?
Okay, let me take the first part of that. Absolutely, in my business consulting, my studio business consulting, I stress that if you're going to teach a group class, absolutely 100%, you should always have 2 people. You have beginners. They get confused. You're switching back roles, leader, follower. You've got to have one teacher, not a teacher and a dance dummy. We've found out that people can listen to 2 people talking at once because they're keying on what they're trying to learn. And so that was critically important to our success, to have 2 teachers. That was one thing. The cross training, because I had taken ballet, I had studied jazz in the top studio in LA for a couple of years, besides the early training. I had a ballet coach and I said, teach me to do a double tour. I was taking private lessons to learn how to spin. And so I brought that in, the jazz, the ballet. And then I had the authenticity of bringing in Cuban masters when we got into salsa. I brought in 2 guys that had been trained in Cuba in the National Folkloric Institute. And then when we had swing, we brought in the top swing dancer couple in the world from Germany. And then we brought in a Puerto Rican guy, and suddenly we realized there's all these different styles, even in swing. There wasn't one thing. When I learned to swing, I learned it not from a manual. I learned it from the people that were doing it in the 50s, 40s, in the movies, actually, in the movies. The best of the best. So I've been very, very lucky that I had, Ron Montez as my first teacher, Nina Hunt as my second, the Fletchers and all the people that Nina sent me to, then Wally Laird, then Espen, then Peter Maxwell. So champion. I never had, tell everybody, never had a bad lesson. Then when it came to swing, the guy that first gave me my first total blanket version of swing was the guy that had won, the first white guy that had won the Harvest Moon Ball. Because up till then, it was all African American. And so he was phenomenal. And then people that were in the movies that were doing the swing in the 40s and the 50s. So, okay, I get that, So all along the way, I'm learning there's not one style of swing, there's 7 or more. Salsa, 7, or Latin, there's 7 or more styles just of the salsa mambo. And, so having all of that, when we would get together, Terryl is the best student I've ever had. She just would totally soak all of this up. And I give her credit because she would also challenge me. She would also say, well, wait a minute, I'm seeing this in what they're doing, and you're not doing that. And oh yeah, you're right. So we really worked off of each other. That's part of it, that the students, you create 2 things when you teach as a couple. You may have all your pictures up on the walls and medals and all that. That doesn't mean anything to a student. They see you do it. They're like, oh, now you have credibility. Now they're going to believe what you show that you can do it. Then you take a student from the audience and you can do it with them. They go, oh yeah, he really can lead what he's saying, not some move that only works as a couple. So we would do that a lot. We would dance with different people in class in addition to co-teaching.
So my comment on that, starting with the co-teaching, from a student's standpoint, because for me, I try to run things through the student's eye. As a teacher, as a human, we have good days, we have bad days. We have days where we feel great. We have days where we feel like work is the last thing I want to do. No matter how much you love your job, there's days you hate it. And so from a student's standpoint, if you have a single teacher, the energy of a class goes up and down based on the humanness of the instructor. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with the qualifications of the instructor, because the instructor is human. Whereas if you have 2 people, the odds of the energy of them both having a bad day on the same day is much less. So you have consistency of energy across the classes. The other thing you have is the ability, if one of you has to leave, if somebody's sick and you have to get a sub, I don't care how great the sub is, you can bring in the world championship for a sub, and there's going to be people that don't like that person. It has nothing to do with the quality of the instructor, because they're used to the way a class runs. They go to that class regularly because they want that format, that energy, that whatever. So if I was sick, or if Enio was sick, or one of us had to go something, we tried to make it where only one of us would go, and then we would sub in. And so there was still one of us to carry the energy across, to carry the consistency for the students. And when you're running a business and you're wanting to build classes, what the students want and need is consistency. And it can be more guaranteed with 2. And that's the first and primary reason. There's hundreds of other reasons, but I'll just say right off the bat with that one, if you're trying to build classes, that's there. As far as the modalities and the cross training, for me, it's not necessarily just about dance. Because I was an athlete before I was a dancer, and different sports and different skills. I mean, you can study tiddlywinks, and there's going to be an expert on that that's going to have a way of teaching a skill. And so if you are taking from lots of different instructors, and it can be completely unrelated to dancing. I learned a lot from a guy that used to juggle parrots because I had this stupid bird that was biting me. I wanted to know how to train it. He guided me on how to train this stupid bird so it wouldn't bite me anymore. And I realized what I was getting from learning how to teach the stupid bird not to bite me was brilliant for applying to my students and to myself as far as discipline. So, where you get the knowledge to be a better instructor isn't necessarily based on being a teacher. So I brought in things that I was learning and teaching skills, ways of thinking and communicating and breaking down skills. And just as a sidebar to that, I had a young man from Russia that had come to our studio right when we were building up and I had no time to do anything. And he says, I'm looking for a partner. And I said, well, just dance with me for a minute. Let me see, where you're at. And I have it. Well, as soon as he danced with me, he said, I want to compete with you. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. But I tell you what I'll do. I'll dance with you for a while because it's really nice to be dancing standard. And, maybe we can do some shows while you get to know the community, and I can help you get seen and I can help you find a partner. And meanwhile, I'm getting to dance some standard with a high quality dancer. What was interesting about that format is because we had no plan, no future, no goals. We weren't going to compete. When we actually got together to work, it was like, so what are we going to work on? And what we ended up doing, which was something really interesting, is we started analyzing techniques and things that we had been taught. Now, he had been taught in the Russian system. I was obviously taught here. We were taught the same thing, barring the language translation. We were taught the same basic skills, the same basic way. And yet both of us had reached the point where we both knew that that's not really what we're doing. That's still what teachers are saying. Those are the words that people use to communicate something. And that's what we tended to use, but those weren't the best words to describe it. And so we just went in and explored, how can we change the verbiage? And how can we improve the verbiage to communicate better what is actually happening? And when I went and got my Pilates certification from Marie Jose, who was a brilliant instructor in breaking down anatomy, her verbiage was so particular about breaking things down, explaining. It really drove down to me where it's like, we have to analyze every single word we say. Is that word the best word? Because if I say that word, what do most people mean? What most people visualize of that word? And that's not necessarily what I want them to visualize. So how can I change what verbiage I'm using to communicate that to those people more effectively, more cleanly, so that they don't do what happens to so many students is they're taught one way as a beginner. They're taught beginner technique. Oh, that's all the beginners need to know. And then if they stay with it long enough, they want to become intermediate somewhere along the line. Well, don't do it that way. That's not what we really meant. I swore, because it happened to me, that I would never do that to my students, that I wanted to tell them the truth as best as I could explain it, even if it was over their head. And I would tell them, you're not going to do this now, but at least know that this is what your goal is. I'm not going to insult you by giving you beginner description. And I think that's where Enio and I balanced, because I came from that mindset, and because he had never been taught beginner technique, because his very first teacher was Ron Montez. He was never taught that way. We completely agreed in the mindset that I may be teaching a brand spanking new beginner, but I'm not going to give them and be the lazy instructor and give them the la 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 beginner technique. I'm going to tell them the truth. And the way I always explained it is there's a train going from Los Angeles to Chicago. And some people are going to get off right outside of town. Some people are going to ride it to the next state. Some people are going to get it halfway, and some people are going to ride it all the way. That's not my choice how far they get on. I'm going to give them the right information on the beginning of that trip, and where they choose to get off the train, that's their choice, because very often the ones you think are going to ride it to the end, they get off right down. And the ones you never thought were going to pursue it, they take it all the way to the end and then get on a plane and keep on going. So it's not a beginner teacher's job to make that decision.
Let me add just a little bit, because she's so spot on. Because of the way she just reads voraciously, she's very, very literal. And so her words were, I mean, we would argue over the words, but I was the opposite. The idea was to make it so simple that people could do this, because we were not doing rocket science. And so many teachers are it's, I hate to say it is ego based.
You can teach advanced technique simply.
Yes.
And that's the thing. So I use a tremendous amount of analogies. Why? Because if you can view the analogy in your head, you can do it. In other words, I always say everything that you need to know about dancing, you did before you walked in the door. And I go through all the analogies of turning around in the shower, and everything's a joke with me, but the way I teach it, it's fun, and I keep it relaxed so that people go, oh, this is easy. And that was the one thing. If it was difficult, I was doing something wrong.
Exactly. It wasn't that they were learning slow. It's that we hadn't made it simple enough yet.
Yes.
And that we had to now look at ourselves, and it's like, how can we break this technique into smaller steps? And this is where every time I worked as a co-teacher with Ron Montez, I would bow down at his brilliance, at his ability to break it down into those minute steps. Because every time I thought, I know how to break this one down, he would show me a way to break it down in 10 more steps.
Yeah. And so, like I said, the analogy part for me was key, because once I did that and I understood two things. The simpler I made it and the more fun I made it, the bigger our classes got. So the ego, you have to put it on the shelf and say, they are not here because they want to be on Dancing with the Stars, or they are not here because they want to be like me. They want to, and I tell everybody, and I do a whole part of my teaching on this, is they're here because they want to meet somebody, they want to have fun. It's not because they want to be dancers. And we did, but I can't put that on them. And when we do that, we end up with a few students instead of teaching the masses to have fun, because a lot of people don't know how to have fun. So we taught them how to have fun.
Or they're afraid to have fun.
Right. We taught them how to have fun while dancing, and that dancing was fun, but not.
And safe.
Yeah, that's
safe.
it.
For
that's
women, safe is
very
huge.
important. Right.
Yeah.
So because we made it easy and fun.
And safe.
Right, and safe, yes. The classes just grew exponentially. And the problem, as I see it, is the studios don't understand that. They want to
turn everybody into dancers.
Into a competitor, instead of what we've learned it was all about lead and follow. It was all about connection with the music, and basically facilitating relationships. And a relationship doesn't mean dating. It means your ability to join a community and be part of it.
And those people will dance for decades.
Right.
Whereas a competitive student, they'll tend to dance till they run out of money.
Or burn out. They
right.
get tired of getting yelled at.
And then as soon as they quit that, because they haven't built the community, they're out.
Yeah.
They're done. Whereas we have students that long since we're gone, the community's still there. Those people still go out and do things together. And because it wasn't about us. We never thought it was about us. It was us about them.
So I want to point something out, which is that Terryl, you mentioned at some point when you were going through this amazing description about your philosophy as an instructor and the tools in your toolbox and how you approach teaching. You said, and that has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a teacher. And I want to take an opportunity to say, I think that has everything to do with the fact that you are a teacher of dance not a dance teacher. And I try to make that separation in my own teaching and in the way that I interact in the world. From hearing both of your philosophies on how you're approaching dance education and building the community and scaffolding and having the truth to your best ability given to your students at whatever level they are, I think that's the definition of a teacher and an instructor, not someone who dances that also teaches, right?
It is, and I'll just say it's interesting that you said that, because when I went through, I had been doing yoga for a number of years, and when I went and got my yoga certification, the man that gave me my certification, he says, "You are a student who teaches." And I said, yes, that's how I constantly view myself, as I am a forever student. I will always keep learning. Every day I'm trying to learn more, and then I teach. Whereas I'm not thinking of myself as a teacher who is a student. I think of myself as a student who teaches.
Well, and I think that kind of goes to, Enio, your point about taking the ego out of what we do as instructors, right? And I'm not going to say that this is the wrong approach, but this is not my personal approach. I'm not going to say, well, I'm the best because of these are all of my accolades. Therefore, I know the truth absolutely, and you will do exactly the way that I do it because this is how I was taught by the person that has all of the accolades behind them, and that's how they were taught, and they were taught this by the person with all of the accolades. You lose the ability to factor in humanity, and that maybe the way that I was taught isn't the golden rule, and maybe there is a better way. So you do have to balance, what your programming, your instruction, your history with having an open mind and learning as many different opinions and perspectives as possible, and then guiding your own path, but also telling your students, hey, this is what I have found to be successful. This is what I am teaching you, but go out and explore and figure out what's best for you at the end of the day.
Well, I think that ties in to a couple of things. Number one is, as a teacher, instead of saying, this is the way I teach it, to look at the student and say, this person has a different life experience. They have different assets and deficits. So what does this person need to learn it? So I have to look at them and through their filter of viewing. And so once you start getting into trying to look through other people's filters, it affects both your teaching, but it also affects your overall view of dance. When you start talking about, like we were at Blackpool, and you could put on a song, and all the ballroom dancers will say, well, that is a quick step. And all the swing dancers will say, no, that's a swing.
That's a bow or balboa or something.
Who's right? They're both right. It's through the filters that they're looking at. And I think so many people in this business tend to view that the filters that they are wearing are and I hate the word, the right filter, the way, it is the way, and disregarding that people have a whole bunch of other filters, and those filters affect how they view the dances, what the dances even are, and how they are going to learn them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's crucial.
Let me take a little back up here. Something that I think is so important is the necessity for mentors. Ron Montez was my first mentor. I then ran into a gentleman at a club who complimented me on my dancing, and I'm thinking, nice, thank you. And he said, do you mind if I dance with your partner? And I thought, oh God, good luck, good luck, mate. Wasn't her, but he takes her out and my jaw hit the floor. And all of a sudden I realized this guy was a genius in the dance world, only to find out that he had once choreographed for Nureyev. He had been Anne Margaret's first partner in her Vegas show. He had done TV shows for years, been a ballet trained dancer, and was an incredible mambo dancer, like rhythmically on a level that I never understood or never would have. And so he becomes my mentor. We become great friends, and they never treated me like a student. Ron didn't treat me like a student. He was my buddy, but I was always learning. With Joe Cassini,
Who's the man
was the gentleman, the choreographer. I never stopped. So when Ron was teaching at USC, he was teaching something like 150 college kids in a class. And I am watching this guy entertain 150 kids. Now, of those 150 kids, they were taking it because it was an easy 2 units of credit,
Right.
but they were having a great time. And here I go, and I build my studio, and I'm teaching, like 100 people in a class, and my room is bursting, and I'm thinking I'm hot stuff. And then I become friends with another gentleman who was teaching in LA, and I find out his classes were like 225. Okay. And I'm going, okay, I think I'm hot stuff. We go to Germany and we teach a class with 600 people in it, and I'm all over myself, and I'm thinking how wonderful I am. And we're staying with a friend in London who is a big interior design artist. And I'm telling him, I'm kind of not bragging, but I'm proud of it. And I go, it's an amazing thing to be teaching 600 people at once. And he goes, I know, I know that feeling. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah, I'm in the Guinness Book for teaching the world's biggest aerobics class. I had 20,000 people at Wembley Stadium.
Oh my
God. I mean, really? Come on.
So you can think you're great.
But my point is, you don't know what you don't know. And you need mentors to you put them up. And when you run out of mentors, because they've passed on, you go, okay, I still don't know what I don't know. But at least if I'm willing to pass that knowledge
If
down.
you're willing to be a student, you'll find a new mentor.
Right. So it's not to say, okay, we're the greatest thing ever. But the point is that we've learned so much that we can teach, and we're willing to share. But so many people don't want to. They don't want to take advantage of it,
and they don't want to admit they don't know.
Their ego. That's it. They don't want to know.
And for me, I'm just like, I need this mentor is gone. Now I need my next mentor. And, it's like, because I still need to learn.
Yep.
Because there's still more to be passed on, because I am just a conduit from these other people.
One of the best mentors that I use now is John Taffer, the guy from Bar Rescue. And he's a screamer, and he's a jerk in many ways. And yet he teaches you so much about the business of dance. And we watch that show like 6-7 episodes, we'll binge watch, and we're sitting there going, God, how did we not understand this then? Wish we had known this then. But you still keep learning. And I'll go to a convention to hear him speak. And some people will go to, Wesley Gu or some of the, the big names in, that are known. I can't think of them at the moment, but you need mentors. And we go to dance teachers, competitors, as dance mentors. But what do they know? Like the front page of my website, dance 10, looks 3. Well, unfortunately, it's the same thing in our business of teaching. We may be great dancers, but we're not great teachers. You have to study with a master
on how to teach.
And you have to study with a master on how to run a successful studio that's not one dimensional, unless that's what you want.
And what happens is people, they don't always think about it, but then when you think about sports, you take football, there are phenomenal athletes that suck as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the best coaches were never great athletes in their day. They're completely different skills.
Yes.
And assuming that every great player is automatically going to be a great coach is ludicrous. So therefore, every great dancer is not necessarily going to be a great teacher, and vice versa. Some of the best teachers I've had were not people that were known, that weren't famous, but they were brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we're trophy hunting, and we're only judging an instructor by how many trophies they have, we are limiting ourselves to possibly missing the best teacher that we could actually find.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, I think one of the reasons why we kind of end up in this trophy hunting situation, or we don't necessarily have access to great teachers, but we might have access to great dancers who happen to teach, is because there's not really a suggested or an encouraged income path for high level competitive dancers outside of, you can also teach lessons at the studio, and we'll teach you how to teach the beginner lessons or the intermediates, or you'll teach a workshop. There's not really something for competitive dancers that want to be on the road every weekend and kind of have this crazy lifestyle that also helps pay the bills and pays the rent, other than teaching at studios and workshops. So you kind of get into this weird situation where you are a dancer, so you're told, great, you can teach now. Can I take 4 years of college to know how I'm supposed to teach? Can I intern with somebody that maybe doesn't have the greatest resume, but definitely is the greatest teacher in the room? I want to kind of circle back to this idea of building a successful dance community. You were mentioning, Enio, about, your 100, 200 person group classes, and the fact that you were able to build such a fantastic social community and group class community at your studio. Where do you see the balance point between social dance and competitive dance in the US and studios, and how can we really build a more successful social community if you are in a studio that has a very competitive drive?
Okay, I think one of the tenets of my training has to do with usability. Okay, if you're being taught something that you can only use in competitive, okay, that's like buying a dragster. Great, you want to go fast, you can have a dragster, you can go 300 miles an hour, but you can't drive it down the street. And unfortunately, too many students are taken from bronze 2 to competitive,
From introductory to
right,
competitive.
to competitive, right. And they can't lead or follow. I mean, that's the saddest part for me, is the inability of people to follow or lead. And I hate to say, I always look at it from the point of following, because like you teach a group class and somebody's going to teach a step. And I think, interesting, how good is this for the ladies? They're never going to lead that step. Now, assuming that everybody in the world knows my step, right? Unless I'm being taught syllabus. But the girls are taught to do the step. The guys are taught to do the step. But the lead part is something that, you're going to have to take a private lesson to do that.
So now I'm going to jump in right here, because I'm going to pause it. So as an example, how it's like, well, you don't teach steps. Well, this is an example of what he would do. We would teach a step, and we'd have everybody do it. But the thing is I want it to blow up. I want them to screw up. See, most teachers want them to everybody finish and feel like they got it.
Walk out of the room and it went
right.
Perfect.
I want it to blow up in my class. So what does he do? He will now turn around and teach 3 variations of that step.
Which require a minor adjustment.
So now the men have got 4 steps that are similar but different. And similar but different is where everything blows. Black and white is easy, right? I teach this and I teach that, those are easy. But if I teach 4 things that are close, now they have to fine tune their lead, and women have to fine tune their following skills to be able to tell the difference. And that's so
that creates the awareness for the lady or follower now, to be more aware, instead of, I'm going to do my step.
I recognize the step he knows that I was taught by my teacher. I know that syllabus step too, because now they have 4 versions of the step. And every class we taught, that was just one thing that we would do in the course of teaching, is that we never made them comfortable knowing one step, because by doing that, we're doing them the disservice of thinking that they actually lead it and that they actually follow it, when I know they all just memorize something.
Right. They don't know what they don't know,
Yep.
you know.
So I make it blow up so they find out they don't know. And now they're ready for me to listen, or for them to listen for Enio and I to break down the details of, this is how you lead A versus B versus C when they're right next to each other and similar. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
but that
that's
was
great. Great point. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Along those same lines, when I'm teaching like a couple's East Coast swing class, I tend to put the sweetheart cuddle, the right side pass, and the peekaboo or stop and go as a sequence that I teach all in the same hour block or the same lesson, for that exact same reason. Like, okay, it's every single time the gentleman's checking his watch, but do I have both hands connected? Do I have one hand connected? Am I catching the lady halfway through and changing the rhythm? Okay, ladies, what are you expecting to happen? We know that the left hand is getting brought in front of the face, so we're turning to our left and we're going forward, but are you going all the way through? Are you stopping halfway through? How does that dynamic work? So I love the idea of making sure that the leaders can lead and the followers can follow, or the initiators know how to initiate, the reactors know how to react, and making things a little bit tricky and murky and confusing so that we have to think through it.
honest.
Yeah.
It's honest.
And see, here's the thing where I love where the West Coast swing world goes, because the concept of Jack and Jill does two things that are absolutely non-existent in the ballroom world. The ability to improvise. Okay, you're given a basic syllabus, but instead of making it so difficult, you're allowing the student to improvise. And you're teaching the one thing that we're here for before anything else: musical connection. And the musicality, you're encouraged. I mean, obviously your points are given on how well you interpret the music. There was a point where somebody started teaching stops and hits, and all of a sudden everybody would freeze, on a stop. But it grew beyond that, and then people became much more aware of the musical. You never hear in a ballroom class about phrasing, about two beat components. You never hear that. And in the swing world,
Or improvisation. It's usually about how to do the steps the right way,
right?
Mm-hmm.
the single, only God-given right way to do this step. I'm sorry, I danced that same step with Enio. He's got 15 versions of that step. So which is the right one from Captain Chaos? They're all right.
And so, they've gone through their own transitions. Sometimes they tend to go off the rails as well, but at least they've got the best way. Then the second aspect of that is because the swing world does Jack and Jill. People can get a taste of competing without having to spend $8,000 for a dress, without having to
Pay for memorizing a routine.
Mm-hmm.
and they're not dancing with the teacher. They can. There's pro-am as well. But the fact that they can get in and compete and have fun
Without a
first.
huge financial commitment.
Right. Now, those people are spending money and they're taking lessons and whatever. And when they get to the top level, they will spend a lot of money.
They start spending costumes and routines. They start, but
Yeah, I think we get it backwards. We, in the ballroom world, we want to give them the fantasy, as Sharon Savoy said. It's all about the fantasy, the
rhinestones
and
the
Prince
makeup and
Charming.
the princess thing.
Yeah, except for one thing. So many people will never get there. When the thousands of people that come into a studio that start, but never get beyond because they've hit the wall of money. We believe
Or comfort level. I know a lot of women, when we start putting that much makeup on them, just the makeup issue, they're uncomfortable with that much makeup. You have to grow into wearing what we wear for competition.
And our teachers tell us that this is what looks good. And I'll give you an example. We had a room full of say 60 to 100 people in a beginning class. We would then demonstrate, and not make fun of it or anything. We would demonstrate competitive cha-cha versus social cha-cha. We wouldn't tell them, we would say, we're going to show you two different versions. Now, we want you to choose which one you want to learn. 100% chose the social version versus the competitive version. Guaranteed, and we did this constantly. When people said, well, what are we going to be learning? Well, you have a choice. I can teach both. Which one do you want to learn? And I would then say, well, this is the difference. This one you're doing to impress a judge, and this one you're doing for fun and whatever. We would just show this cha-cha crossover, New Yorkers, and do it so relaxed with, much more body action, then would add the arms and the, and the straight legs and I don't care if it was American or international.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. People looked at that, but when they're told this is what you're, this is what looks good. Student says, you know everything, I don't. Okay, I believe you. So we're telling him it looks good.
Yeah.
But to the human eye, the naturalness of social dancing,
the regular folk,
is missing because we're not doing that definitely not in salsa. Jive doesn't exist in the swing world.
No.
It's a dance that people look at it and go, what the hell are they doing?
Right.
Standing there side by side, kicks.
And people forget because, our dance community, and there's so many people that dance. It's like, oh, when you put all the dances together, even swing salsa, there's so many of them. It's so big, but there's more people that don't dance than there's people that dance. And most of the people that learn to dance don't go to competitions. They go to the local club, not the dance club, but, the Italian restaurant that happens to have a little band on there, or the country restaurant, honky tonk. They're dancing there and they don't want to look weird.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do the big fancy stuff because it's too much. It's like wearing an evening gown at the beach. It doesn't fit where they don't visualize themselves using that in their lives.
Right. And we'll see people on Facebook.
And it goes back to their filter again.
We'll see people on Facebook post, yeah, we went to this, nightclub and we did our routine, and, and they're so proud of themselves, and everybody in the audience going, get a load of these aliens. I mean, what planet are they from?
Yeah.
And they think they're fantastic, and most people are looking at them like, oh my God, these people are strange. We say that a good dancer can kill a club because a good dancer goes in there and starts doing their whole thing. They intimidate the social dancer. Mm-hmm. In the 40s, people did not go to dance schools. Yes, Arthur Murray's existed, but you learned to swing dance from your aunt, your mom, your sister, your cousin, your brother.
Basically the way I did.
Everybody learned it from somebody, and you got, you did it, and there were clubs everywhere, and everybody danced it, and the music was popular, and the majority was dancing. Right? Now, we're a minority because we've become kind of like the strange people that dance on So You Think You Can Dance, or on Dancing with the Stars.
Dancing with the Stars. And, and there's a lot of regular guys in this country that look at Dancing with the Stars and don't look at that and say, I want to do that.
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, there's girls that say, I want to do that, but it doesn't appeal to the average person just wanting for the husband and wife wanting to do something together or date night. Yeah. It doesn't relate.
Yeah.
Virtually anywhere you go, there's going to be more followers. I'll say women. No, in this case, I'll say women. There are more women in the studio than men. Would you agree?
Absolutely. 100%.
For 15 years, we had more men than women.
Every class.
Now, that's one reason our classes got so big, was the more guys we had, the more women came. And
we can go into a long other story why we had more men, but
that's part of our training.
But that's another story.
Right.
But basically is we made sure that the men felt like they were progressing.
Yep.
And at no point did we, and it wasn't focused on just the men and women just followed, because it goes back to what I was saying before. We challenged the men, but we gave them tangible skills. Because if it blows up in their face, they don't stay.
Yeah. No, I'm going to go back.
Okay.
I think we did it differently. We basically made the men not feel like dancing was something that you put tutu and tights on.
Right.
We I say I masculinize it. And that's one of the reasons that the two teachers, when I say I masculinized it, we know the guys are in there comfortable. Think about this. The first thing you do in the studio, you go in and they put you in hold. You hand a guy a girl. His brain just short-circuited. He can't function.
Guys' biggest fear is looking stupid in front of a woman.
Absolutely.
Yep. Number one.
So the biggest thing we did was we wouldn't let them touch a girl. Our classes were 90 minutes. They wouldn't touch a girl for the first 40, 45. And people go, you're not having him dance? No, because the minute I hand him he can't function. Now he's moving parts instead of just learning how to have basic rhythm.
So we came up with 100 different ways, depending on the dance that we were teaching and whatever, is for the brand spanking new ones to delay how soon they could blow up. We wanted to build a little bit of confidence, right? First.
Once I know what I'm doing, now I can hand me a girl. And yes, I'm still going to struggle. But again, I won't feel as stupid as if a guy feels stupid in front of a woman, he will not come back. Okay. And that's the biggest deficit in most dance teaching.
Absolutely.
Because, it doesn't
they don't
matter.
keep that as a priority.
Like I said in the intro, I thoroughly enjoyed talking with and learning from Enio and Terryl. If you also enjoyed part 1, don't fear. Part 2 is coming up soon, where we continue this conversation and talk about their online platform, Yoga for Long Life, as well as more topics concerning the dance world. So please tune in for part 2. If you are interested in any of the information regarding EXT consulting, or if you want to just learn more about Enio and Terryl, links are in the description box below. As always, I'm Samantha. I'm your host with Love.Live.Dance. You can follow Ballroom Chat on Facebook and Instagram at Ballroom Chat. You can also become a patron and support the podcast over at patreon.com. Just search for Ballroom Chat. If you've not already done so, make sure that you give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, follow, so that you are alerted anytime we drop a new video, including part 2. Post something in the comments that you found interesting, or that you have follow-up questions on, or maybe you disagreed with and you think we got wrong. We'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. As always, stay safe, stay positive, and we hope to see you dancing very soon.